And in this episode,
There's no way I'm doing any. I don't read any fiction books. There's no way I will like
Yeah.
do not do something which kind of brings me forward in a way.
Yeah. So this is the thing. This is the way the world is. As Paul Chek says, we are human beings, not human doings. We're supposed to be present. Yeah.
hey listener, welcome to the Art of Medicine podcast. You can look at us as an online clinic for everyone who wants to self-improve their health, their vitality, and become a great athlete, become a great entrepreneur, creative artist, or business leader. Health and performance has its foundational theories, of course, but this topic is incredibly nuanced and individualistic. That's why we bring you the knowledge and the wisdom of outstanding performers and individuals from all areas, all regions, and all times of life. Why? Because these people are no talking heads. These people have actually gone through the experience of what works and what doesn't. These people are experts, coaches, and practitioners in their fields, and they will share their knowledge, their wisdom with you, so that you can use that knowledge and achieve the things you want to achieve. Welcome again to the Art of Medicine, the #1 resource for holistic health and performance. I'm so glad that you're here, and now please enjoy the show.
My name is Tim. I'm your host for today, and today's guest is Warren Williams. Warren is a Chek instructor teaching advanced holistic health and exercise science in the UK. He has an extensive background in martial arts with over 25 years of practice. He spent over 15 years in the Chek holistic health and exercise system, became a Chek instructor, and also has his own coaching business in which he is not only working with getting your average Joe into holistic shape, but he's also works professionally with elite sports athletes, for example in the Premiership football teams, and successful business leaders. Warren, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you for having me on the show, man. It's exciting to be here. So yeah, let's spread this love, spread this information, and get more people healthy, fit, and functional.
Yeah, for sure, man. Warren, for any people who have not yet heard of you, how would you picture yourself when you look back at how it all started with your holistic health journey in your early days, and how it went down when when your successes came, but also when your failures came, and how did that whole journey make you to the person you are today?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, that's the hero's journey, right? That's, when people study Joseph Campbell, and anybody hasn't heard of him, go and study Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey, and you realize that every person that lives a life that's worth living has to go through a hero's journey. So many people focus on the end result rather than the actual journey itself. And when you realize that people that have gone through the journey and have had struggle or challenges are the ones that create the greatest change in the world, it makes you inspired to live that journey yourself. So, for me, I kind of got into mysticism and spirituality and exercise and martial arts all from a very young age. I was really inspired by comics. I'm a massive comic book fan way before the MCU and all the films came out. I've been massively into that sort of stuff, and I was always attracted to the potential of humans, and by seeing almost the concept of superheroes made me inspired to want to become something like that myself, someone who always pushed the boundaries of his own development. So from an early age, from maybe 7, I started to practice martial arts. I started to get into meditation. I wasn't one of those people that partied. I was just really focused on this stoic path. I was inspired by people like Bruce Lee, and just understanding that in order for you to create greatness, you have to have a certain level of discipline, which means a certain level of sacrifice. So I learned that from a very young age.
And these all
And
happened when you already are 7 years old. You already have that mindset.
yeah. I was so inspired, and I was inspired to be different. I loved being different, and that people would try to say it to me like, "You're weird," and I used to love it. I'm so glad I'm different. Whereas I suppose with a lot of children want to fit in. They want to, keep up with the Joneses and feel safe by being conformative. They would not like that, but for some reason, I loved the fact that people thought I was weird or different because I was choosing choices that most people wouldn't choose. So yeah, from an early age, I started doing that. I probably partied for maybe 18 months of my whole life, and that's it. That's all I've ever been involved in. So I kind of gave up parties when I was like, I mean, I probably started partying at 16 and I gave up at 17 or 18. And then just devoted myself since then to kind of just really focus on health and healing. So I started with martial arts, as I said, and I've done 5 different forms of martial arts. So basically all the fields. So wrestling, done kung fu, done karate, done jiu-jitsu, and done the boxing. So I had a really good broad spectrum of all the martial arts stuff, and that kind of led me into getting more into the mind, understanding the workings of the mind. And I was in a mystery school and studied with masters, spiritual masters, so I can kind of combine both facets of health. And then through the martial arts and the ability to understand movement patterns, when I started to work in this field of health and well-being, the path I was kind of on was the path of the warrior archetype, perfection and kinesthetic awareness and stuff like that. So because of that, I attracted a lot of elite athletes they would only be inspired by people that could do what they couldn't do, or at least match what they could do. And because my physicality was quite high level, because I competed for my country in martial arts and stuff, they had a higher level of respect of the information I was conveying to them, as opposed to someone who's a couch potato giving them advice on exercise. I could actually do it. So that made it easier for me to transition into kind of getting these elite athletes to want to work with me. So that was kind of the path, and that kind of allowed me to kind of grow my brand in a sense by attaching my name to elite athletes.
You mentioned kinesthetic intelligence. I think it's a great point. I think it's one of the intelligences which is out there. So we have the IQ stuff with the rational, whatever. We have emotional intelligence, awareness, self-awareness, mindfulness. What is kinesthetic intelligence, and how do you teach that? Is it even possible to teach?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, most of the world is so intellectual in how they learn. They need to be told how to do something. And I just always remember Bruce Lee, when he said, don't think, feel. And that always stuck with me from a very young age. So I was always inspired by movies where you put a blindfold on and you have to increase your sensory awareness and take away one sense, and then your other senses are heightened. And going back to the martial arts stuff, sorry, the comic book stuff, when I think about characters such as Daredevil, who was a comic book character who was blind, but yet his 4 other senses were heightened, all of these sort of things kind of stimulated me into wanting to have more sensory awareness, more proprioceptive awareness, and more feel and understand from a feeling point of view. Doing is the teacher rather than looking, but actually doing. So for me, kinesthetic intelligence is more about connecting to your body's awareness of itself and feeling what's right and wrong, as opposed to thinking what's right and wrong. And because that becomes more experiential, it's your own personal truth. So I find the more someone feels what's right and wrong in terms of movement, the better or the faster they develop that level of movement. So working with the Swiss ball, as you're aware of, that object that creates so much sensory input, like you have to have such a high level of nervous system activation to be able to use it. It forces you to really become aware of your center of gravity, because if you're not, you get thrown off that ball. So, in answer to that question about kinesthetic intelligence, I think that the Swiss ball for me was one of the best tools to give me that level of sensory awareness, because of the fact that you can't ever relax. If you're on a Swiss ball, you can never ever relax. So that heightened my kinesthetic awareness to the point where I was able to translate into everything in life for me. Like my ability to react, my ability to feel whenever I have digestive issues or shoulder pain or anything like that. All my senses improved. My awareness to connecting to my body in every single way improved, and that was applicable to everything in life.
Yeah, right. Yeah. There are thousands of sports science programs out there. You made the path to go with the Chek Institute, and you stuck there quite intensively and over a prolonged period of time. How do you see the Institute and the work with Paul Chek, and why did you choose the Chek Institute out of all the sports science paths you could have gone through?
Yeah, I'm one of those people that believe that there are no accidents, and that was literally the first thing I was exposed to. So if I share the story briefly, I was working at a fitness chain because I walked the path of being a personal trainer for a certain amount of time, and I was employed at a gym, a fitness chain, and the manager of the gym, me and him got on, but none of the other staff got on with him. Pretty much because we were quite like-minded and quite into thinking outside the box in a sense. Paul Chek was doing his first ever workshop in the UK, and the manager had already paid for it for both myself and him to go. So because of that, I went and was exposed to Paul Chek, and it was my passion and love for movement and seeing someone who actually looked like he could move and was quite functional, that kind of led me to go down that path. And because he kind of tied in other systems that supported the movement that I was already interested in, such as the spirituality and the nutrition, it kind of made me to stay on that path. But I've seen other people, but I've never been inspired to want to learn from them simply because they were focused on one modality, such as Charles Poliquin or Gary Gray or someone like that, who they were really good, but it was in one aspect of health. And when I learned, years ago that the term holistic means whole body health, not one facet. And I said, no, I'm going to stick with Paul because he's the only one I've seen that covers every single thing. There are people that are incredibly better, like Paul would say. The Eldoa method is incredible when it comes to movement or posture and stretching and fascia and stuff. But it's just one thing. I wanted, for me, a true master is someone who embodies everything, and that's why I kind of stuck with that path with Paul.
Right. Okay. Now, I can only imagine when you are working with someone who's a pro soccer player, for example. He comes into your coaching, and then you start talking about breathing, hydration, nutrition, sleep, exercise. You also talk about the mental game. Maybe you talk about chakras and fascia and meridians. How do you convey that message, which might be considered more spiritual or esoteric, even coming from the traditional Chinese system? How do you convey that to someone who is like a go-getter, who's a soccer player, who is a competitive athlete for a living?
Yeah, when I speak to a lot of people that do this, they always say that they're quite nervous about sharing other aspects of health with people that are only of a specific mindset of movement or exercise or coming from the physical world. But I've always been comfortable sharing that information as an absolute truth. So in answer to your question, I don't say all this stuff with doubt. And I think because of that, the person that listens picks up. I say it as if I speak about chakras and spirituality the same way how someone would speak about nuts or fruits. I say it as a matter of fact, and because of that, I think they anchor to that. And geez, this guy is not saying it like it's weird. He's just saying it like it's normal. So I think that and the intention behind that is what kind of allows people to find it a bit more accepting. On top of that, I have over the years, I've created lots of really good examples of why this stuff isn't just airy-fairy or mystical. I always root it back into their perception of reality. So if they're a footballer, I won't say you should meditate because it makes you more spiritual. I'll just say quieting in your mind will give you a better focused mind whenever you're kicking the ball or whenever you're receiving the ball, or words to that effect. And I don't often straight away talk about spirituality. I talk more about stillness and rest and recovery. And then I get them to anchor into how they feel once they are still or quiet. And then once they realize from an experiential point of view that they are actually more healthy, or they are more present or more balanced, then I say, right, now that you know that works, let's now take it to the next level. And that's when I'll actually start talking about going deeper and getting more into spirituality. But I think if they're a go-getter and have a 100-mile-an-hour mind, the best thing to do is to create a rainbow bridge. And rather than them doing 90% workout, I'll say, right, we're going to do a 90% with a 50% recovery, and the recovery is going to be a work in exercise, such as maybe doing a deadlift with an empty bar and just do that really slowly. And then when they're doing it, I'm like, what's your heart rate like? Oh yeah, I feel really calm doing this. Oh cool. How do you feel? I'm like, my mind is a little bit more at rest. I'm like, cool. And then I'll keep that going for maybe a month. We'll be doing that, and then they'll start saying, I've been sleeping a lot better. So they'll start bringing back to me the benefits of that active rest or active recovery or working sort of stuff. And now that they're buying into it, then I'll start pushing that further and say, right, now let's do some more breathing work. Remember how you felt when you did the breathing with the weights, and how the feedback you gave me was you slept better, your sex life was better or whatever? Now I'll start adding this in. So I slowly start adding more things over a period of time, and then they buy into it because they feel it. So I never start any client with meditation. Never start anyone, because I think starting someone who has a very busy mind with meditation is like getting someone who's sedentary to go for a marathon in the first session. It makes no sense. So I prepare people over a period of time where they're giving me feedback that this relaxing stuff is beneficial. So they already know it's the truth for them. It's their personal experience.
All right. Out of the content I watched from you and also our conversation until now, I think my perception is that you are pretty old soul, I would say. So someone who's very wise already. Also, if you said you are already from this very early age into martial arts, into like the stoicism. Now, how do you personally implement all those teachings and the coachings you do, the studies you have done? How does a Warren daily life look like when it comes to exercise, when it comes to nutrition?
Yeah, so something I remember Paul Chek said years ago was live it and then teach it. And I always live by that. So for me, my normal daily routine is when I wake up, I spend 2 hours. I have a morning ritual that takes 2 hours. So I'll kind of summarize that. So I'll wake up and I'll start with my structural alignment stuff, because I've had some injuries over the years. So there's certain things I still have to correct. So I am very focused on doing that. So I do a lot of what we call postural work, probably half an hour. And then after that, I'll do my stabilization. So I'll do balance work, lots of very challenging balancing drills using the Swiss ball. I'll do a lot of circular exercises with things like Bulgarian bags and suplex balls. And after that, I'll move into my martial art part. So I'll spend about 15 minutes doing like shadow boxing and stuff with martial arts and forms and kicks and stretching. I'll do all my stretching techniques. So that will take me up to about an hour. And then after that, I'll shift into the spiritual side. So I'll do all the hard stuff and finish with all the soft stuff. So the spiritual side is now, once I finish that, I may finish that and then go straight into some form of Tai Chi, because it's still active movement. And that's slowing me down gradually. And then after that, I'll go into toning work. So I've got Tibetan bowls. I've got crystal tuning forks. I'll do those for a little while. Then I'll do sound therapy. So I'll do like toning work, like with my voice. After that, I'll do my meditation, which will take me up to about an hour and 40 minutes total now, with all of those things I just mentioned. And then the last 20 minutes, I'll finish off with affirmations. So I have tons of affirmations, maybe about 15 to 20 different affirmations. Some for my family, some for my friends, and then specific personal things that I want to accomplish in my time here. So dreams and focuses and goals that I'm trying to make as a reality. So I'll have those stated as affirmations as well. And that's how I kind of finish. So, I have things written down, but I have things in my head that I always, say every single day. So that's kind of my typical morning ritual. After that, I won't start my day until at least 10 a.m. So my phone is on airplane mode until 10 a.m. And that's when I start looking at all my calls. I watched something maybe about 7 or 8 months ago, and it spoke about this thing called Facebook depression. And, he was talking about how what happens when people wake up in the morning is they turn on their phone and they basically give their authority over to their phone and to all the likes and social media stimuli that they get. So they're already moving from a place of disempowerment, because they're waiting for the likes to determine their sense of validation.
Yeah.
So, and I thought that was very powerful.
I mean, I see it on myself. Yeah, it's like I always struggle with waking up, and I have a phone, of course, with has the alarm on it, and then it's just, of course, I use the airplane mode because I don't want the Wi-Fi signal like close to me when I sleep. But yeah, it's like it sucks you in, right? And also when you are a public figure, when you are doing something on social, you're always checking like, do I have new comments? You have new likes, and you just get sucked into the world. How do you remain that discipline to like every morning I do that for 2 hours, and even though the last 50 minutes then I spend with affirmations, like you have to. Is it natural for you by now, or how was the process?
Yeah, I mean, initially it was probably half an hour, and I just kept on adding more and more things to it. So it's like grown, maybe over the last 10 years, it's grown to like a 2 hour routine. But it becomes so, the work that we do, I remember something else that Paul Chek said, only see as many people as you can be fully present with. And the more complex the cases are, the more of an anchor you have to become. That means the more of the work you have to do yourself to be able to offload the trauma that you're basically taking on as an anchor for your clients. So if I don't do this stuff, I can't be present because of the complexity of a lot of the clients that I work with. So I know if I've only done half an hour on this specific day and I get a really challenging client, it will wipe me out for the rest of the day. So I have to do this stuff. So it's always that voice in your head of, I don't really want to do that much today. But I always defeat that voice because I know how important it is to do that, to be present for my clients. So I don't find it difficult. It's just routine now. We go through these 4 stages of consciousness, which is unconscious incompetence, where the example is the smoker. They are unconsciously smoking, but they're doing something unconsciously incompetent or badly. Then they get to a certain level of awareness. They may have someone in their family who has cancer, or they may know people that have died. And it brings them to a certain level of awareness. So then the second stage is they get to what we call unconscious competence, where so you got unconscious incompetence, and then you got conscious competence. Sorry, so conscious competence. So now they are consciously aware that what they're doing is bad, because they were first unconscious, and now they're consciously competent. So they're aware what they're doing isn't really great for them. And then they eventually get to the point where they become so consciously aware of it that they stop doing it. So now they're in the third stage, which is conscious competence. So no longer conscious incompetence, but conscious competence. So now doing the right thing, but they have to constantly keep reminding themselves to do the right thing. And then eventually it becomes so habitual, they're now at a stage of unconscious competence, where it's just happening even without the effort. They're in the flow state.
Yeah.
So that takes a certain amount of time. So for me now, with all of these rituals, I'm in the unconscious competence stage where I'm just constantly doing it. It feels natural to do it. Just like when people wake up and they brush their teeth, that's unconscious competence. So it's doing something enough that it becomes that point, and knowing that if you don't, how you feel when you don't do it. So your body always gives you a feedback. It's just whether or not you're able to listen. And unfortunately, a lot of people today aren't able to listen to their bodies, which is why they get to a point where they have a stroke.
Right. Yeah. So after the morning routine, how does your normal day when it comes to diet and nutrition look like? Are you taking any supplements? Are you following a ketogenic diet? Are you following a carnivore diet? Are you following an intuitive diet? Are you doing rotational diets?
Yeah. So once I've finished that, then I'll have my breakfast. And interestingly, the word breakfast is a break fast. So you're breaking the fast of the night, where your body's going through its healing stages. So I normally start with something quite soft. So I'll normally have like a porridge, and I'll have like some form of smoothie with coconut oil, and I normally use Pure Synergy, which is like a multi-green vitamin sort of thing. I'll have that with some almond milk and some coconut and some bananas. I'll mix it all together, and then I'll have a porridge, but with MCT oil and walnuts and goji berries and stuff like that. So I normally start with something like that, because I don't like to be too heavy straight away after I've done all of this work, where because I do a lot of breath work as well, so I'm trying to be really light. So I'll do that, and then I won't have an actual solid meal, like a heavy meal, until the afternoon. So maybe about 1:30, or 1 or 1:30, I'll have a heavier meal. And that's pretty much how I kind of start. But at that point, I've probably coached 1 or 2 clients. I try not to see more than 3 people a day. And most of what I do is online, just mainly coaching. Every so often, maybe once once or twice a month, I might engage people in physical assessments, structural assessments and program design stuff. So typically I'll do some coaching, and then I may have my main meal, which is, like I said, about 1:30 or so. After that, I'm not one of these people that just works non-stop. I've learned that you have to back off and have downtime very often. So once I finish something like that, I'll probably, if I'm not reading the book, I'll just like watch something on one of my box sets or series. I'm a massive kind of TV junkie in that sense. I love watching shows and stuff, and that is so important because people think that in order for you to do this work, you have to be like an extremist, and that's not spirituality. Spirituality is not about extremism. And Siddhartha Gautama, a person that people know as the Buddha, he became the Buddha when he sat under a tree and meditated for 4 months and then realized, what the heck am I doing here? This is stupid. And that's when he became the Buddha. He became enlightened because he realized extremism doesn't work. And I remember an example where one of my clients, I was coaching her, and I don't know how we got to the subject, but she was like, we spoke about movies. And she's like, oh, you watch movies? And I'm like, yeah, of course I watch movies. And I said to her, do you think I'm sat in my room meditating, and then the doorbell rings, I go downstairs, I coach you, you leave, I go back upstairs, and I go, and then she started laughing because she realized how silly that sounded. And that's the thing, people think you just sat at home meditating until clients come in, and then you go back in the upstairs levitating, until the next client comes. It's just silly. That's not spirituality. So, and this is what Paul talks about, having these illogical things that you do that have no outcome. So you have to find things that have no outcome. And life isn't about hustle. And so many people that are in the wellness field think it's about building their empire at all means, regardless of the cost it has to you. So, you can either create wellness by one of two things. As when I say wellness, I'm talking about abundance. You can either hustle and outwork people, or you can be in flow with the universe.
I really, really much agree with that. You should really do something without an outcome to just relax. But why is that? Because for me, in my mind, I want to achieve something, right? I want to peak at 40, maybe at 50, and then look back at a life which was fulfilling. And then why should I do stuff? Why should I do activities which do not lead me towards that goal? How's that mindset? Because for me, I'm like, there's no way I'm doing, and I don't read any fiction books. There's no way I will do not do something which kind of brings me forward in a way.
Yeah. So this is the thing. This is the way the world is. As Paul Chek says, we are human beings, not human doings. We're supposed to be present. Yeah. So we're supposed to be present at all times, but we're so fixated on doing something. So life is about conquering in the mindset of a man. And, yang is about breaking things down and constantly doing more. And as they say, a man with power wants more power. So we're always in the breakdown stage, but we're never in a relaxation stage. So when we talk about the celebrating your successes stuff, you can't do that unless you step back and see, have that celebration, have that reward stage, like even in the hero's journey, where you go through the ordeal. But after you go through the ordeal, then you go to the reward stage. But you also go through the innermost cave. You can't go into the innermost cave unless you have a level of reflection. You can't have a level of reflection unless you take a pause. You can't take a pause unless you stop doing things that have an outcome. So because life is about yin and yang, you have to have a point where you have a pause, that stillness, that reset, to actually appreciate what you've done. And, it's about two things. You either go through hustle or flow. And the hustlers will tell you to do as much as you can, conquer the world until you die. But you can't actually appreciate what you've accomplished in that mindset. So there was a study that was done, I can't remember what the doctor's name is, but it was actually a nurse. She basically interviewed hundreds of people that were very old and near death, and said, what's your greatest regret? And most of their greatest regret was not taking time to appreciate life. That was pretty much across the board. It was 10 specific things that they said, but the main overarching thing is not taking time to appreciate their friends, not taking time to be present, not taking time to tell the people that they love them, and not doing things just out of love, as opposed to out of reward or some form of outcome. And when you realize that, you realize that most humans are constantly doing, they're not being. And so that's why it's important to be able to take a step back, because that whole statement about most people sacrifice their wealth, most people sacrifice their health to get their wealth. But at the end of their life, they spend all their money or their wealth trying to reclaim their health. So if we did it now, we'd be doing both at the same time. And when you see the studies of Rich Dad Poor Dad, I think it's Robert
Kiyosaki.
Kiyosaki, when he interviewed those billionaires and millionaires and found that pretty much all of them across the board were successful but unfulfilled. So it doesn't matter how many things they achieve from an outcome point of view, they weren't fulfilled. So we know that even the top people in the world that are outcome driven are not fulfilled. So it's not outcomes that make you happy, it's fulfillment. And fulfillment comes from taking a pause and appreciating.
Yeah, I think that's a very wise way to look at it. And especially in today's world when we are so much driven by external factors. It's often hard to do. Also, we don't get educated on that, right? So you kind of have to figure it out for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, on that, when you look at the education system today and the way we're taught, we know that 98% of all millionaires and billionaires didn't even complete school anyway. So we know it doesn't work in the real world. But you look at the people that are teaching us in school, they don't look like they're masters. They're not multimillionaires and billionaires. So they're not even showing us from their work how to do it, but yet they're teaching us that we have to focus on the way they teach. And when you look at that, most of the world's learning is not mathematical logical. Most of the education system is mathematical logical. But that's not how most of the world is. When you look at the basketball players that are seen as dumb, but yet they're making hundreds of millions, and they've been told by the educators that you're silly, and those same educators are making 30,000 a year. So who's right? The educator who's saying you're not smart because you don't remember books, versus the person that's just living life and having fun, who is exploring their talent, such as a multimillionaire who's a basketball player or an NFL player or something like that. They're showing you that it doesn't matter about education, it matters about passion.
Right.
And we know that, it's not about education, it's about passion. And if you just focus on the outcome thing and you're just educating yourself, then you lack passion because you're not taking the time to appreciate it.
Do you believe in mastery? So the concept that you should pick one subject and then master it in all its facets, and ignore the rest?
I think that you can't master everything, and that we have a specific calling, and the goal is. So I'm kind of answering this question slightly differently. The goal is to find out what your soul potential is, your soul contract is, and whatever that soul contract is, it means that you've chosen a specific outcome in terms of achievement in life. So when I say outcome in that sense, I'm not talking about only focus on the outcome. What I'm talking about is the outcome of what your life is supposed to be. So we base that on the archetypes. And
do you think you can choose that? Excuse me. Do you think you can choose this outcome, or do you think it is given by your ancestry, by your DNA, by your subconscious, whatever it is?
Yeah. Someone asked me the questions about fate and probability, and it's quite a deep question, but simplest scenario is we have a predefined path for our lives. The people that are ignorant, that don't follow that path, tend to live a life that is unfulfilled. The people that listen to the calling and follow the flow of life, they create the probability of a possible successful life, which is what they had initially been chosen to achieve. We call that the soul contract. So we've all chosen a specific path at an unconscious level at the start of our life, and if we're in flow with it, we naturally do that path. But it's just whether or not we're able to listen to the signs. I mean, I'll give you an example. One of my footballers, when I started working with him, he'd been injured for 3 years. He'd been traveled all around the world to try and get healed, and no one could heal him. I got him back within 2 weeks of his injury to be able to play again, but no club would allow him to play because they assumed he was still injured. So he actually had to leave the UK and play in Australia. And he said to me, frustratingly, The best I've been since I was 18. At this time, he was 34. He said, the best I've been since I was 18, but no club will touch me. And I said, well, if you push hard to achieve something, and the universe pushes back against you, it's telling you it's time to retire. Mm-hmm. You have to listen to that. So he kind of let go of pushing, and then as soon as he let go of pushing, 2 clubs offered him a contract. So he realized that he didn't have to push to create the reality he wanted. He just had to be in flow. So, you know, in that you kind of realize that the path is something that you have to be a co-creator of, rather than someone who makes it happen. And that's basically what it is.
All right. So you go more with flow, but you still have this contract. You still are kind of a slave, in a positive way maybe, to what life gives you.
I mean, no, you can totally ignore it. So then you're not a slave in that sense. You can totally ignore your path and create something else. But you see that all the time you see it in people's eyes. So many people that are unfulfilled, and it's a big problem. Like most of the people in the Western world are truly unfulfilled. And they think that, as we were saying earlier about external stuff, they think that buying things creates some form of balance to this unfulfillment, but it's not. You only become fulfilled when you follow your soul contract. And that's why so many people feel empty inside. There's an emptiness simply because they're not listening to that innate voice, that innate calling of follow the path that you asked for. Because you're the one that asked for it. You made that path. So where our goal is to be a co-creator of our reality, as long as we assist the path. And so we have, you know, the victim mindset. We have people that think life is doing them, life is against them, you know, life is happening to me. But then obviously, as you've heard, you know, it's supposed to be life is happening for me. So as I always say to people, there aren't good or bad things in reality, because it's all based on perception. As science has proven, there's no such thing as reality. It's only perceived reality. There's no actual reality. So if you perceive something bad is teaching you a lesson, in your perception, it's a good thing. But if you perceive something bad is happening to you and it's bad, then you perceive it's a bad thing. So there's no actual reality. It's based on your perception. So if we're able to see life's challenges as lessons and we learn from it, it helps us to move towards our soul contract. Because everything is happening to teach you to get back to where you need to go. So as Paul Chek says, all of our challenges in life are beautiful opportunities for growth.
Mm-hmm. I have one follow-up question on that one. And this is, as a coach, as someone who works with professional athletes, of course, on the one side, you have the performance, right? You have diet, nutrition, sleep, but you also have the exercises and the strength and conditioning part. But then on the other side, we talked so much today about the mind game, in a way, about the spiritual side, about the reasons behind doing. How do you incorporate both into your practice? And do you even feel like sometimes the people you are coaching, they need more of the mind game part, they need more of the guidance, the spiritual part? Or do you kind of have a barrier somewhere where you say like, hey, I'm your coach, but I want to make you stronger. I'm not your, I can't choose a life path for you, or I cannot guide you.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
Yeah, because I have 3 different ways of working with people. So some people I focus predominantly on the performance side. So I call that total performance. And with that, I help them to improve their potential through improving their function, their posture. Obviously, the best performer has the best posture because you have less stress on the body, that's more functional. So I'll do that, and then I'll also give them the nutritional side to help support the function of their body. And to a lesser degree, I'll help them to find their why, their purpose as to why they get up and train, because everything is intention. When you think of it like this, you're either training because you hate your body, or you're training because you love your body. Both of them are forcing you to train, but one is from empowerment and one is from disempowerment. All those women that, I hate my body, I want to lose weight, I'm going to the gym and I just don't like the fact that I have to train to lose weight. That's disempowerment. And then you got those people that, I'm so in love with who I am that I value my body to the point I want to make it as functional as possible. They don't need goals. They are their own goal. You should be your first project. So I help, that's the mind side of it that I help with the athletes from that point of view of, the intention, create an intention for why you'll not be performing. Don't come to me because you're injured and you've only come to me from the disempowerment. I'm coming so I don't have injuries anymore. Look at it as, no, I want to make my body perform as good as possible for my career. So that's the mind side of it where I go. That's as deep as I go when it comes to the performance side. And then you have clients that come to you that aren't athletes, but even actually go back to athletes. There are athletes that I've had to work with that their identity is tied into who they are in their club. And now they've gone through a crisis because now they can't be that person because they're injured. So in that respect, I may have to spend more time going deeper into healing them as a person before they get back to performing as an athlete. Outside of that, then I may have people that have just been broken. They may have had childhood trauma or had a death or in the family or something. And that side of it, I have to help them heal the inner trauma. And from that, I may have to go into spiritual concepts and stuff like that. So there's that. And then my third is when people just come to me for like if they have parasites or pathogens in their body underlying what we call the subclinical stuff that isn't easily identifiable. And you may have to take them through a specific gut healing plan to help them. And with that, you just focus on nutrition, but you still have to find a purpose for why you're trying to heal.
Right. Yeah, there's always needs to be a why, right? Otherwise, there's no way anyway.
Yeah. One last thing I'll say just to tie into that is I remember I had someone say some years ago, everybody's doing something to get to something else. So if someone comes to you with low back pain, their goal isn't to get rid of low back pain. The goal is, what's the low back pain stopping you from doing? My low back pain is stopping me from being a good lover to my wife, as an example. So it's not that they want to get rid of low back pain. They want to still be a good lover to their wife, and the low back pain is just getting in the way, as an example. So again, that's to your point, that's the why.
Right. So you always try to dig like one level deeper, really ask like, what's the core, what's the root cause?
Yeah.
All right. Warren, I always end up the interviews with one specific question. And this is, when you could make a phone call back in time and then speak again to your 18-year-old self, 19-year-old self, 21, 22-year-old self. We have 10 minutes on the phone with him. What would you say? What would you give him? What would you advise him to do?
I'd advise him to enjoy the journey without judgment. That would be my one thing. Don't worry, everything will work out the way it's supposed to. Because I think if you give them too much information, that creates a block. So long as I say to my younger self, it will all unfold the way it's supposed to. Enjoy the journey. Just enjoy it. Appreciate and enjoy it. You will learn everything you need to.
All right. Yeah, that's a sweet message. Awesome, man. Let's wrap this up. Where can people find you when they want to work with you, when they want to know more about your content, about the stuff you do?
Yeah, thank you. WarrenWilliamsCoaching.com. I'm not sure when this podcast goes out, but my website's not going to be up for another week because it's getting redesigned. And obviously on the internet, on Instagram, it's Warren Coaching. And Twitter, I think it's also Warren Coaching. So any handle to do with Warren Coaching or WarrenWilliamsCoaching.com. They'll be able to find me there, as well as Expansion, because I'm creating a new mentorship program through something called Expansion, which launches mid-April.
All right. And you do personal training, but you also do online coaching, right?
Yeah. I do performance coaching. I don't like to say personal training. That's a specific niche that I'm not really associated with in that sense. But performance, as well as mindfulness, as well as gut healing,
All right. And Warren, thank you very much. Wish you a wonderful day.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your listeners. Yeah, definitely. We'll always do that. That's the goal.
I hope you liked this episode with amazing and powerful Warren Williams. If so, please like and subscribe. Check him out, Warren Coaching, on Instagram. Leave us a good review on Apple. Follow us on Spotify. And guys, then I see you in the next episode. Peace.